Okay, so our faith and belief group is Islam. I'm AJ, this is Hayden, this is Reese, and our other members aren't here yet, so we're just going to fill in for them. Mm-hmm.
All right, first up, we have the story behind the symbol. A widespread symbol of Islam continues to be the Hilal, which is the crescent or new moon, and it signifies the beginning of the new lunar month within the Islamic calendar. This became a widespread symbol after the Mamluk, something like that. Rulers used it to decorate mosques in 14th century Cairo. The word Islam means acceptance, surrender, or commitment, and is also related to the word for peace. Followers of Islam are called Muslim, and they're those who make peace and also surrender to the will of Allah and enjoy that presence of Allah with others. The Prophet Muhammad gave the name Islam to the religion when it was founded.
And then I'm going to be going over the core values. So within the Muslim religion, there are three, and there are like multiple core values. So there's like the belief in the prophets, the belief in the Prophet of God, the five pillars, the Quran, and those are just some of the important core values. Most of the Muslims believe that God has sent human prophets to every nation. They believe that these prophets are how God communicates his guidance to people. And the main message that the prophet delivers is that people should confide in God and he will provide his guidance. And then the five pillars consist of the declarations of faith, prayer, fasting, charity, and pilgrimage. The declaration of faith is the statement, quote, "There is no deity worthy of being worshipped except God, Allah, and Muhammad, the messenger," which would be the prophet of God, end quote. This statement is something that all Muslims abide by and must be shown in their actions. Prayer is something that is very important and that is used to connect with God. Most Muslims pray at least 5 times a day. Zakah is what Muslims consider charity to be. In Islam, they consider it a duty and to give back to others in need. Fasting is very important in Muslims because it demonstrates a true devotion and self-control. Muslims learn to sympathize with those who are not very fortunate as well. If they are able to, it is important for Muslims to participate in Hajj, pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in their lifetime. It is a very important, intense spiritual practice. Finally, the Quran is believed to provide God's wisdom and instructions. The Quran is God's final revelation revealed to the Prophet Muhammad and has been fully preserved.
So I decided to do a sacred reading. The sacred reading I chose was one of the 5 pillars, so I chose the second pillar, which is Salah, which is a prayer. Salah is an act of offering of prayer or worship to Allah. To perform Salah, Muslims must be fully dressed to keep their body covered, women and men, and face towards Mecca. They do this to show their dedication to their faith and their devotion to Allah. In doing this, they also submit to him and sought out for his forgiveness. Salah can also be seen as a way for God to keep them in front of their thoughts and keep them from doing bad deeds / temptations. Although all of the 5 pillars of Islam are important, Salah is a highly important obligation upon Muslims and is essential to ensure them so that they stay within the boundaries of Deen and remain mindful of one's faith. To perform Salah, 1, you must make your intention to pray. 2, raise your hands to your ears and say, Allah is the greatest. 3, place your hands over your chest. 4, keep your eyes focused on the ground. 5, recite the opening chapter of the Quran. 6, perform Kuruku, I think is how you say it, by bending down. Return to standing up again. 8, perform the Sijju. 10, say this phrase in Sijju. 10, rise up from the Sijju and sit for a moment. 11, perform the Sijju again and then return to a standing position. 12, perform the Tasajju, I think that's how you say it.
Okay, and then I'm going to be going over next the conflicts and issues that Muslims face within the U.S. culture. So, the Muslim religion is unfortunately one of the most discriminated against groups in the U.S. culture. Though discrimination against Muslims has been happening for decades, it kind of exceeded after the attack on September 11th, 2001. And it has kind of resulted in unbelievable effects against the Muslim culture. So after this attack, Muslim became a target of aggression and harassment. One example of harassment that was thrown at this culture was an experience that was shared on NBC News. A young girl and her sister were simply just walking down their street that they lived on in Brooklyn, and somebody driving a car screamed out their window and yelled at them and calling them a terrorist. And so this is just kind of impactful because you can imagine how that impacted their self-esteem and how much it made them feel like. And this was just one of the example of many experiences of verbal abuse that Muslims have faced. Another example of this kind of abuse has been seen often in the workforce. So Muslims have reported being verbally abused by their employers and employees and co-workers as well. And then, as I mentioned, this culture has become a really big target for people. Throughout American culture, people would constantly be suspicious of this religion and would immediately put the blame on them if they were given the opportunity to. And Pew Research gave the statistic that 1 in 5 Muslims have been targeted by airport security. So this just kind of goes to show that this culture is constantly being watched under a magnifying glass to this day, and people are just waiting for them to mess up or even make the slightest mistake so that they can put the blame on them, even if there's no real cause. Other issues that the Muslim culture faces in America is the lack of sense of identity. So another person being interviewed by NBC News exclaimed how they felt that they struggled with their identity being an American Muslim. They said that though they were American, that they had been born in America, they were still treated as the other, and they felt often really secluded in society and just kind of cast off. So this culture is not widely accepted throughout the U.S., unfortunately, and people often feel ostracized throughout their daily lives. And this was actually a serious issue a while ago when people were protesting and resenting the fact that mosques could still be built in the U.S., and they tried to take that right away from the Muslim culture. And then the Islam culture also struggles with something called Islamophobia. Islamophobia is a powerful hate against Muslims that results in an aggressive and hostile attitude towards them. A lot of discrimination against Muslims is a result in the way that they are portrayed in the media. So a lot of the movies that we watch, TV shows, even short videos, are often portrayed as the Muslim being the bad guy and kind of the enemy. And then a poll done by Pew Research Center demonstrated that about 45% of Americans actually believe that Muslim culture promotes violence. However, that's honestly not true at all. They believe, or people who don't truly understand the religion believes that jihad promotes war. However, this is not the case. The word actually is a representation of the struggle that people within the Muslim culture face with sin. And this just goes to show the lack of education that about this religion that is in American culture, and kind of that's the reason for all the misconceptions and false accusations against this belief system.
All right, as for our words from a believer, we first interviewed our classmate here, Musa. Some of his identities that he listed are he is a first-generation American and comes from an immigrant family. He is also Ethiopian. As far as his adoption of the Islamic faith, he essentially just grew up on it. It was his family's religion first, and then grew up into the religion. But as he got older and started to ask more questions, like for example, he has family members who are of the Christian faith, and started questioning, okay, well, how can both of these, only one of these faiths can be right? And so he read deeper into the Quran and found that made a lot of sense to him, and so he has 2 feet both planted firmly in the Islamic faith. And that's how he discovered it. As far as everyday life and how the faith kind of coincides with contemporary issues, he's very mindful and proactive of doing good deeds and giving back to the community, whether that's just community service or just picking up a piece of trash off the grounds, stuff like that. And then also ritual propriety and manners are very big in his everyday life. For example, having to pray 5 times a day, which kind of signifies the 5 pillars of Islam, and even just having to eat food with his left hand, type of stuff like that. As far as contemporary issues goes, he's very big on, and his Islamic faith is big on humanitarian issues. So for an issue such as gun violence and gun laws, he leaned towards more like leftist perspectives on that, and wanting to like add more restrictions and precautions and stuff like that. As far as the best part of his religion that he enjoys the most, he enjoys a lot that Allah offers. Wrap it up. Okay, so for our last words from a believer, we interviewed a girl named Sheza. She's Muslim, and some of her identities are she is Sudanese. She's a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and like Musa, she's also a first-generation American. As far as her adoption of the Islamic faith goes, also like Musa, she grew up in the faith. Her family is Muslim, and also really interesting, she lived about an hour south of Dubai for about 6 years, and she found that living in a state, in an environment where the predominant faith is Islam, really strengthened her bond and her faith being Muslim. And then so going more into the everyday life and issues piece and contemporary issues part, she's found that being a member of the LGBTQ plus community and also being Islam have kind of butted heads and don't really coincide very well. And so she's kind of had to redefine the religion for herself and think about it more as where does Islam align with her personal beliefs versus just adopting all of the beliefs that are in the Islamic faith. As far as her everyday life goes, she feels that being both Black and Muslim in Fort Collins has kind of been an isolating experience just for her and her family, especially one that's kind of naturally juxtaposed by living in a predominantly Islamic state for such a long time. And so then the best part that she enjoys the most in the Islamic faith is that there is a purpose for everything. And so when she's caught up in the day-to-day issues and is overwhelmed with relationships or just little things, she finds it very calming and comforting to know that there's a greater purpose for everything. And then she's also really big on the Islamic holidays. Her favorite is Eid al-Fitr, I think, which is essentially marking the end of Ramadan, and it's a big festival where friends, family come together, they have good food, they dress nice, and she said she just loves the atmosphere and the community that comes from it. So, yeah. And then the works cited page. Thank you.